Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From 1 King Street West in downtown Toronto, welcome to the 112th season of the Empire Club of Canada. For the many, many thousands of you joining us either through our global webcast, our podcast, or on Rogers Television, welcome today to our meeting. Now, before our distinguished speaker is introduced today, it is my great pleasure to introduce our head table guests. And I'd ask each guest to rise for a brief moment and then be seated as your name is called. And I'd ask that the audience refrain from applause until all head table guests have been introduced. So, starting, Ms. Anita Gupta, President and Chief Executive Officer, NMI Tax Consulting Group, and a Director of the Empire Club of Canada. Mr. Harry Seymour, Past President of the Empire Club of Canada. Ms. Barbara Jessen, President and Chief Executive Officer of Jessen Communications and a Director of the Empire Club of Canada. Ms. Marie Haitayan, Account Steering, Lufthansa German Airlines. High Commissioner Vishnu Prakash, the High Commissioner of India to Canada. And my name is Gordon McIver. I'm the National Director of the National Executive Forum on Public Property. Ladies and gentlemen, your head table. We're very pleased as well to have joining us today a group of students from the MBA program at Ryerson University. Students, would you please rise and be recognized? Welcome to the Empire Club. Our guest this week could be called, without any exaggeration, an accomplished, worldly, and industrious overachiever. In Vishnu Prakash, Canada gets one of India's most accomplished diplomats, a man who served his country all over the world, from Moscow to New York, Tokyo to Cairo, Shanghai to Seoul. Everywhere he served, there's been major advancements made for his country in economic and trade portfolios, to the point where no one was surprised when he received the title of Ambassador of the Year in 2014 from the Asia Society at the Korea Center in Seoul. He is truly a man of the world. He has a son in New York, a daughter in California, and he even will tell you that travel remains one of his greatest passions in life. Since Prime Minister Modi's rockstar reception in Canada earlier this year, our citizens were made fully aware of the important links that bind our two nations. The story of Indo-Canadian relations goes back many decades, to be sure, but it was in the 1990s that the friendship really began to deepen, when India instituted major reforms to its economy centered around large economic liberalization. During that decade, numerous Canadian cabinet ministers, a prime minister, and countless Canadian business leaders visited the world's largest democracy, seeking to open doors and increase economic activity between our two nations. By 2011, we had such a solid relationship that it was in fact dubbed the Year of India in Canada, a joint initiative by both governments. In the interim, Canada also welcomed thousands of new Canadians from the subcontinent, and we saw in every major Canadian city new cultural centres, restaurants, and businesses. Many of us even began to enjoy Bollywood films and the magical new musical experiences, enriching social and economic fabric of our country. It has, by almost all accounts, been a friendship that has just gotten better with age. When you delve into the archives of the Empire Club of Canada, the subject of India has been at the very top of our hit parade from the beginning of our history. And countless speakers over the past 112 years have stood at this podium and recounted to our countrymen the various stages of progress enjoyed by Delhi. We often refer, in fact, at the Empire Club to June 20th, 1973, as one of the most important defining moments of the Empire Club in our entire history. That was the day that Indira Gandhi addressed the club in Toronto after making a historical visit and a speech to a combined session of Parliament. Her speech was entitled Democracy in India, and its purpose was to bring to the attention of all Canadians how much India had to offer to the world in spite of its many challenges. Here's a quote from that very famous speech. The founding fathers of our nation asked the question, can India become a modern nation without sacrificing harmony and human values, without being caught up in the pursuit of possessions? The answer is India can and will, and this is what we're working for. India has given so much to human civilization. Even in the dark ages of colonial subjection, we had men of radiance. A nation which comprises 1/7 of mankind must have some contribution to make. It can do so when its millions are given the opportunity of developing their personalities. The transfer of scientific knowledge has brought with it a strong imitative propensity, increasing awareness of conditions elsewhere that has spread dissatisfaction with conditions at home. But I see also a tremendous upsurge of confidence and creative endeavor in our young people. Now, Prime Minister Gandhi was effusive in thanking Canadians for all that they'd given India and for the warm reception that she received here. But Canadians were starting to realize increasingly that we also owed a great deal to them, a fact that even emerged in our popular culture with such famous song lyrics as "Thank You, India," as sung by our own Alanis Morissette. This new mutual respect is where we stand today as we welcome Ambassador Prakash to our podium to answer the question, what's next for the world's fastest-growing large economy? And we should listen carefully, because India's success will increasingly be related to our own. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome to the Empire Club of Canada the High Commissioner of India to Canada, Mr. Vishnu Prakash.
Thank you, President Gordon McIver, for your very gracious introduction. I wish Prime Minister Modi was here to listen to your words. That would have been very useful. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, namaste. Good afternoon. I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited to this iconic speaking platform of Canada, and I feel humbled that that I am here today speaking from a platform which has been used by some of the greatest people of their times. I'm particularly happy that we have some friends, young colleagues from doing MBA. Let me start off with a disclaimer that my presentation reflects my own views, not necessarily those of Government of India. So the proposition before us is whether this is India's moment in history. Is India an idea whose time has come? I see many of you are of Indian origin. I know that many of you have been to India, so I am speaking to a very distinguished audience. India evokes different feelings, different views amongst different people, which is very natural given the size of India, given the sheer diversity of India. Some people have said that India is an enigma wrapped in a mystery. Some people have remarked that centuries coexist in India. It reminds me of an anecdote when I was posted to New York some 25 years ago, and one Indo-American told me about an actual incident that happened with him in the late 70s, or was it early 80s, I forget. He said he was somewhere in the Midwest in the USA, and he was the only non-white participant in that reception. And somebody decided, this funny brown man is hanging around, so why don't we start talking to him? And well, he said hello, etc., but then didn't know what to say. And said, where are you from? So he said, I'm from India. So he asked him whether he knew where India is. He said, yeah, it's somewhere there. And end of the conversation. Again, he made a valiant effort. He said, do you have roads in India? So this friend of mine said, sorry, we don't have roads in India. We only have footpaths and mule tracks in India. He said, oh, wow, how exciting, how sexy. After a few minutes, he said, but do you have houses in India? Where do you live in India? He said, we live on the trees, we go up the trees and we live on the trees. But he said this conversation was getting a bit irksome. And then, there was a brainwave. He said, oh, wow, you live on the trees. I would love to do that. But how do you go onto the trees? He said, we take elevators. So that was in the late 70s or early 80s. But today, there is every possibility that you call a CEO of a Fortune 500 company in USA or anywhere in the world, and he may say namaste. It's not fortuitous that Indian CEOs are heading Fortune 500 companies, including in USA. The CEOs of PepsiCo, Microsoft, Google, etc. are all Indians. In Canada, also Indo-Canadians are making their mark. They are heading billion-dollar groups. Some of the large groups that are headed by Indo-Canadians include Fairfax Holding, George Weston Group, the TD Bank, and so on and so forth. I would like to note that Indians are today the richest immigrant community in the USA, richest, and 42% of people of Indian origin in USA have a graduate degree, which is remarkable. Two of the governors in USA are of Indian origin, and interestingly, something similar is happening in Canada. I don't know how many of you have seen closely the results of the last general elections, which were held just a few days ago. And for the first time in Canadian history, 19 members of parliament in the House of Commons will be of Indian origin. 19. That is 5.5%. 5.5% of the House of Commons will have people of Indian origin, and 16 out of 19 parliamentarians have been elected on a Liberal ticket. It is amazing. 9% of the Liberal MPs would be of Indian origin. So that is the kind of impact that Indo-Canadians or people of Indian origin are having. I mean, in Canada, if you just look around, 1.2 million people of Indian origin, highly educated, highly motivated, are adding great value to the society, are kind of have closely integrated with the society, and have enriched the social fabric of this country. Back home, also something similar is happening. India this year is likely to become the fastest growing major economy in the world, and not just this year. In the years to come, at least for the next 15, 20 years, we do expect India's growth rate to be in the region of 7% plus. In fact, we need a double-digit growth rate, and we are hoping that it will happen. And most of the experts believe that by 2030, India will be the world's third largest economy with a GDP of more than $6 trillion. The Modi magic is working. I'll talk of the Modi magic momentarily, but for example, in the first 6 months of this calendar year, from January to June 2015, India has attracted the world's highest foreign direct investment of $30 billion, overtaking USA and China. It has happened for the first time, for the simple reason that despite huge challenges, and Gordon mentioned the challenges, I mean, we have challenges, but there are lots happening in India, and the world is taking notice. This year. Last year, talking of technology, we managed to put a Mars orbiter. India launched a Mars probe in the very first attempt in the world, and just at 1/10 of the cost of its competitors. And last year, Indian economy, Indian democracy was seen in action when the people of India, the young people of India, elected Prime Minister Modi's government and Prime Minister Modi with a thumping majority. It was a vote of change. There was a solid mandate given by the people of India, just as there has been a vote of change and a solid mandate given by the people of Canada to Mr. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. I would think that the election of Prime Minister Modi was a watershed event in Indian history. Why was it so? For the first time in 30 years, a political party got a resounding mandate. But more than that, what was amazing was somebody from the weaker segment, underprivileged section of the society, which Prime Minister Modi belongs to, came to the very top on the dint of merit. And he is known for good governance. For 14 years as the governor or chief minister of Gujarat, which is a province of India, Gujarat became the fastest growing state in the country. It did strike a chord with aspirational India, and it was a vote of change, vote for development, Young India had spoken and spoken loudly. Even more interesting is the fact that before becoming the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi had a popularity rating of just 78%. And last September, a month ago, another opinion poll was done by the US research firm Pew. And according to that, his popularity rating today is 87%. 1.5 years in government, 87% popularity rating, because he reflects the aspirations of people. He is the agent of change. And let me say it upfront. India is a very large country. Our challenges are huge. I'll come to the challenges. Change, at times people say, oh, change is not happening that fast. Change cannot happen overnight in a continental-sized nation like India, but India is changing, and very much the case. I mean, talking of Prime Minister Modi, it also happens that he has a third largest following on Twitter, which is very important in today's world, and with more than 5.7 million followers. Yet, there are challenges galore, as I said, in India. Our per capita income is just $1,500. Canada is $50,000. Despite the fact that we have pulled out hundreds of millions from under the poverty line, still 250 million Indians are poor. They don't have basic necessities. Half of the rural India is still without electricity. So those are the dimensions of the challenge. And external, these are the internal challenges, and external is the challenge of terrorism, which we face constantly and which emanates from our neighborhood. And such is the infrastructure of terror that obtains in our neighborhood that it has left no country unscathed, including Canada. So what is the actual state of play? Where do we stand today? What is actually happening in India? I can do no better than to refer to Mr. Thomas Friedman of New York Times, who has been following India very closely. And he said this 10 years ago, and I quote, "India is the oldest civilization, the largest democracy, and has the youngest population. Almost 70% of people are below the age of 35. There is a huge famine breaking out all over India today. An incredible hunger, but it's not for food. It's a hunger for opportunity that has been pent up like volcanic lava under 4 decades of socialism and is now bursting out with India's young generation." I could not have said it better than what he has observed about India. Every bit of that is true. Let me build on some of the elements, 4 elements that he has referred to. I think let me build on these. First is an ancient civilization with a modern outlook. And again, I don't have to talk about the ancient civilization of India, which has endowed us with a very rich cultural heritage. In the modern context, it has given us a lot of soft power, land of Buddha, Gandhi. This is not the time to get into that. But talking of yoga, I don't know whether you know that the UN General Assembly at the proposal as proposed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has decided to observe 21st of June every year as the International Day of Yoga. And rarely has a world body taken a decision with such unanimity and such speed as it was done in a matter of just 3 months. And this year on the 21st of June, the world over, hundreds of millions of people of all nationality, of all ethnicities observed yoga. That is the message from India. What is the message? It's a message of health, it's a message of well-being, it's a message of welfare. There was a mention of Bollywood when you talk of ancient civilization. I mean, it's not ancient, but this is a part of our culture, of the Taj Mahal, the mosaic of religions. India is home to the greatest number of religions in the world and the greatest melting pot. And that also brings me to the fact that India offers a very unique tourism product. You have practically everything that a tourist can aspire for. I'm very happy that the India Tourism Board, India Tourism Office, which is present in Toronto, can I ask the director to please stand up and get recognized? He's the director of India Tourism Board, and we have what you know as the Incredible India campaign, which is a very effective campaign. Every year, presently, about more than a quarter million Canadians go to India. Quarter million? India is a country of 1.3 billion people. I think we need more Canadians to go to India. More than 170,000 Indians are coming to Canada. By the way, we are trying to make travel to India much easier, and we have, a few months ago, we introduced what we call the e-travel visa. So sitting from the comfort of your homes, online you can apply for a 30-day visa. You get the approval within 4 days, and you don't have to go to any high commission or consulate or foreign. You go to India, you get your visa on arrival. Twice a year, you can get your e-travel visa, and which is 30 days non-extendable. But last month, again, this was a gift or the announcement made by Prime Minister Modi. We have introduced a 10-year multiple entry tourist visa or business visa for Canadian passport holders. And we have priced it very low, so that idea is that it should become very easy. I mean, your daughter or son or spouse encourages you to go to India, and off you can go to India. And then you have the Indian Tourism Office to help out, and I hope that we'll see much. And the best part is that somebody was asking me how to travel to India. Lufthansa is a great airline. I've been traveling, but let me do a commercial for a direct air flight. Air Canada is introducing direct flights from the 1st of November from Toronto to New Delhi. And the reason I do a commercial is that they've chosen a very auspicious day, 1st of November, which is my birthday. So I feel very happy that they are so far-sighted, and therefore I'm doing this commercial. The second bit that Tom Friedman mentioned, other than civilization, was that India is the biggest democracy. I would argue that it's not a question of numbers. Certainly India is the biggest democracy, but the best part is we have made the democratic model work. The Cassandras had it that India will fragment. Today, India is becoming progressively stronger. We are the only major country in the world which has managed to diffuse so many insurgencies. We have given a sense of participation to every section of the society. Let me pose a question, or let me point out something to you, which is remarkable but an undersung, is not a very well-known fact. We have the world's second largest population of Muslims in the world, 180 million Muslims. Radicalization is alien to the Indian Muslim. Just 40 is a large number still, but just 40 people of Indian origin are known to have joined the ISIS. And I don't have to quote the figures from other countries. Why? Just think about it. There are at times reports about incidents that happen in India. They are aberrations. They do happen. But look at what is the whole story in India. 1.25 billion people belonging to all ethnicities, communities, religiosities living in harmony. Every section of the society knowing that they have a right of opportunity, they have a right of equality. There is a constitution of, and Prime Minister Modi said recently that there is only one religion in India, and that is the Constitution of India. And that is something amazing. Again, let me point out what the democratic India is doing to empower the underprivileged section of society. There is an affirmative action program in jobs, in education, in politics, which is helping the weaker segment of the society to rise. 50% of the village council seats have been reserved for women, and there is much more to follow. And that is, at the heart of that is the free and fair elections, which happen with great regularity. And we saw that in 2014. The Economist magazine had a very interesting quote. It says about the Indian elections, young, urban and educated Indians treat politicians and phone suppliers alike. If the service is disappointing, they switch. That is Economist. And we also have, as Tom Friedman said, a very young population. The world is aging, ladies and gentlemen. The figure that I came across a few years ago was that by 2020, the average age in Europe will be 49 years. Canada is fortunate, it will be about 42 years in Canada, average age. Average age in China will be 37 years. And just today, if you would have seen, China has switched back to two-child policy. 49 in Europe, 37 in China, and 29 in India. The world is aging, but India is getting younger. And every year, 10 to 12 million youngsters join the job market in India. We have to train, educate, skill 300 million youngsters in the next 10 years. That is the scale of the requirements, and we need partnerships. And one of the partners that we need is Canada. And when we talk of the synergies between India and Canada, and we talk of the future, this is one partnership that we are very keen on, because we want to gain from the Canadian educational experience, whether you're universities or colleges. Indian diaspora, I have already spoken of. Highly motivated and skilled Indian professionals are moving to Canada. Many of them are adding skills and efficiencies and value to Canadian products and companies. And then last point is the opportunity or the hunger for opportunity in India. And as I like to say, that India is re-emerging, not rising, but re-emerging. And for the simple reason that in 1820, not very long ago, India accounted for 23% of the world's GDP. 23% in 1820. And then we had the colonial rule, as you know. When we emerged independent in 1947, we accounted for 1% of the world GDP, from 23% to 1%, with a 3% population growth rate and 1% growth rate in economy. So that was the situation that we inherited in 1947, and it has been up by the bootstraps since. In the last 30 years, we have grown at about 6%. In the first decade of the 21st century, we have grown at 8%, and the engines of growth are chugging again. And I hope that we will become a moderately developed country in another 20 years. Fortunately, the economic fundamentals are quite strong, whether it's the inflation, whether it's the fiscal deficit, whether the stability of the rupee. The external debt is just about 21% of the GDP. National saving rate is high. And the Modi factor is changing things. What he is doing is to speed up decision making. What he is doing is to cut the red tape. What he is doing is to introduce e-governance and e-business. FDI limits, foreign direct limits, are being enhanced, and ease of doing business is being improved. There is a lot of work to do. The work is cut out for him and the nation, but things are happening. And again, talking of the efforts of social inclusion, I don't know how many of you know that to enable the underprivileged section of society to come within the banking system, 180 million bank accounts have been opened in a matter of 8 months with a zero balance. But those people, even the weaker section of the society, have deposited $6 billion into the banks, which were kept under the pillows. So those are the kind of changes that are happening in India. Science and technology, we are known for frugal innovation. In the area of medical research, we have done very well, whether it is generics, whether it's bulk drugs. You know that for HIV drugs, the HIV drug cocktail, which was being sold for $10,000 and not affordable to the poor people, poor countries, Indian pharma companies are now offering it for $200 instead of $10,000. And Clinton Foundation and the others are working very closely with India on that. India is an IT powerhouse. We are also outer space, we are doing quite well, including launching satellites, even recently for Canada, USA, and the others. Fortunately for us, India's global footprint is growing. The best part is that today, everybody wants to engage with India. India is not seen as a threat. India is seen as a factor of peace. India is seen as a factor of growth. And we have been actively contributing in peacekeeping operations. We have been reaching out to our neighborhood because we know that we are the largest country in the neighborhood, and it is our responsibility to take our neighborhood along. That is what we are trying to do. So I know that I've had to rush, but let me, before I close and invite questions, the president of Empire Club has told me that you have all lots of questions, very difficult questions, and I'm trembling in my knees. But before I take questions, let me bring Canada into the matrix. As was mentioned here, India-Canada relations have changed beyond recognition, especially in the last few years. Canada has become a priority country for India. Our ties have been elevated to a level of strategic partnership. We have marked synergies on complementarities, and the challenge today is to build on the huge canvas that has already been painted. For example, we have complementary economies. India has a huge demand and appetite for all kinds of goods. But we have a middle class which is more than 200 million, which will be 600 million strong by 2028, the largest middle class in the world, and we need everything that you have to offer. Given the opportunities that I have outlined, Canadian companies, including Canadian pension funds, are getting very active. Already in the last 18 months, $6 billion of Canadian pension fund money, $6 billion has gone to India. This week, CPPIB is setting up the first office by a Canadian pension fund in Bombay, Mumbai. Brookfield, one of your powerhouses, has become the largest investor in commercial real estate in India. I can go on. So this is the background in which Prime Minister Modi's visit happened to Canada. It was a standalone 3-day visit, and the sheer excitement in the media among the people was seen to be believed. I was at the Ricoh Coliseum when Prime Minister Modi addressed more than 10,000 people, and there was electricity in the air. There was a Canadian CEO sitting next to me, and he said, "Ambassador, I don't know what your Prime Minister is saying, but I will buy whatever this guy is selling." So that was a kind of education I've already mentioned. Infrastructure development is another big area in which India and Canada can cooperate, work together. Let me give you an idea of the infrastructure needs that India has or what we are doing. We are going to add 50 million housing units in the next 10 years. We are going to have $140 billion in the next 5 years invested just in railway upgradation. Whether it's roads, 100 smart cities are being set up all over India, and the entire ecosystem can be created. And Canadian companies and Canadian firms are very strong in environment management, water management, waste management, green technologies, and these are the areas in which we can work together. Energy, we have just signed a deal with Cameco to import uranium. We have promised to invest 10% or $4 billion in the LNG gas pipeline, which is the agreement is being worked out between Petronas and BC. So these are a number of areas in which infrastructure, education, energy, technology, that we can work together. And before I close, let me also mention that Prime Minister Modi spoke to Prime Minister-designate Mr. Justin Trudeau just 3-4 days ago. They had a very good conversation. Prime Minister Modi has invited Mr. Justin Trudeau to visit India. The two leaders had also met in April when Prime Minister was here. They had a very good meeting, and we hope that we are rather confident that we can build further on the synergies and the platform that has already been established. The road ahead is going to be very promising. Road ahead is going to be very exciting, whether it is India-Canada relations or the journey that India is going to be taking ahead. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be lots of challenges, but we are very confident that we are very well equipped to handle those challenges. But we need friends like you. We need members of the Empire Club like you. We need the support of well-wishers. God bless you all, and I'm now ready for questions. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. It was fascinating. One thing I'm concerned about, do you worry that so many of your brilliant, educated young people are leaving India?
The question, well, at one point of time we were quite worried. We used to call it the brain drain. And we would say, oh my God, now we learn that it's not brain drain, it's brain gain. Because as I mentioned, our youngsters, our engineers, and we have a very large country. We are producing, we have the third largest pool of trained scientific and technological manpower in the world. Now what do the Indian youngsters do? They go out, they rise the ladder, social ladder, economic ladder. They're very proud. If they take citizenship of a certain country, whether Canada, US, they're very proud Canadians, very proud Americans, but there's a cultural affinity to India. And so we see this as an asset now. And it's not fortuitous that given an opportunity, Indians tend to rise to the very top. Thank you. Yeah. Can you take the mic, please, so that others can hear you?
Enjoyed your speech. How do you assess India's current relationship with Pakistan?
Say again?
India's current relationship with Pakistan. How do you assess it? And do you feel it could be improved?
With whom?
Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay. We share a history with Pakistan. As you know, Pakistan became an independent country in 1947. We have a difficult relationship with Pakistan for the simple reason that, very unfortunately for us and for the world, Pakistan uses terrorism as an instrument of foreign policy. There's a whole infrastructure of terrorism that operates from Pakistani soil, the jihad culture. And that permeates everywhere. You have had cases of individuals even in Canada who have been neutralized, who had certain mindsets. That is our only challenge with Pakistan. It's a big challenge, but only challenge. We have time and again reached out to Pakistan because the people, my dear friend, are the same. The aspirations of people are the same. 99% of Pakistanis are peace-loving. Some of my best friends are Pakistanis. And we are also very conscious of the fact, I alluded to that we are a very large country. We have a self-vision of where India stands. We are a very large economy. We have the capability of taking that entire region along with us. And we have been time and again reaching out to Pakistan and saying, look, let us compete on economic terms. And we have extended asymmetric concessions or facilities to Pakistan. The most favored nation agreement, Pakistan did not extend it, we have extended. We are willing to have trade. Indian companies are willing to invest in Pakistan. But our only challenge, and it's a huge challenge, and every second day, unfortunately, there is firing across the line of control. Every few days, there is a terror incident. We really hope that good sense prevail on our friends and they seize policy which is going to cause them also grief, is causing them grief, and cause grief to the world. But as far as we are concerned, we know that the only solution to a problem is dialogue, and the only way ahead is peace and development, and we are very much on that path. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for being here and giving us your views on India and how India is developing. Just following up on the question that this gentleman asked, you mentioned that Pakistan's way of operation is terror. But isn't the question that why is that happening? Isn't that question because of the disputed territory in Kashmir? Is India trying to resolve that basic argument that it has with Pakistan, whether Kashmir belongs to India or it belongs to Pakistan? If that can be settled, don't you think that this terrorism issue will disappear?
There are two parts of it. First of all, thank you, sir, for your very valid question. There are two parts to that answer. One is, let's say that there is a dispute. Let's say there's a dispute with any two countries, any two people. How do you solve the dispute? Through a gun? By promoting violence? By killing innocent people? By causing mayhem? By brutalizing your own society? Is this how you solve it? Or you solve through a dialogue? They stake claim on some parts of Jammu and Kashmir. We think that we have a historic right, and we have our own claim, and we believe we are right. But that's besides the point. Point is that there are enough instrumentalities to sit across the table and discuss. Let me give you an example of India and China. We have a 4,000 kilometer long border with China, 4,000 kilometers. The border is undelineated, not even demarcated. Every year, incursions happen. Chinese patrols cross into the Indian side, and etc., etc. We have flag meetings, we resolve that. Not a bullet has been fired in anger since 1993. 4,000 kilometer long border. We have also they claim large chunks of Indian territory. So, point is a mindset. What are you trying to do? Is in the 21st century, do you solve a problem through terror, violence, or through dialogue, through in a cooperative way? That is the question. No, it's not a question of Kashmir, it's not a question of anything else. Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, High Commissioner, for your information about your country, which I found most valuable. The outgoing government of Canada has negotiated a number of trade agreements. Most recently, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and just prior to that, the European Union, and going back a few decades in our history, the North American Free Trade Agreement. So there have been a lot of major bloc kind of trade agreements. Now, how do you see India fitting into these new blocs that are being formed?
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate and thank you for that question. I should have touched upon that. Let me talk of India and Canada first. We have a very important partnership with Canada. I mentioned some elements of those partnerships. Today, despite the fact that we are both more than $2 trillion economies, India-Canada trade is just about $7 billion, which does not do justice to the potential. So I'm happy to tell you that between India and Canada, we are very actively negotiating two agreements. One is a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA, and the other is a FIPA, Foreign Investment Protection Agreement. And during the previous government, we have made a lot of progress, and we are hoping that we can pick up the threads soon and bring these two important agreements to early fruition, so that will give a huge impetus to our economic and trade ties. On the larger issue, we are also quite keen and active in having special trade arrangements, economic arrangements. We have, for example, a comprehensive partnership agreement with the ASEAN region. We have a comprehensive partnership with Japan, with Korea, with Singapore, with our own neighbors. We are negotiating a FTA, free trade agreement, with EU. We are doing it with Australia. We are doing it with Israel. So each country in today's world seeks to expand its partnerships. I don't like to use the word block. It's not either or, it is and also. So we are very hopeful that as the Indian economy grows, we will be able to have more partnership with many more countries, and that is a signal for me to step down, right? No. One last question, if there is any, and then sorry? Yeah, please, sir.
Again, I echo everybody else's sentiment. Thank you very much for what is really a very encouraging talk. For somebody like myself who's been doing business in India for the last 10 years, many of the things that you described today in your talk are very encouraging. The CPP investing and opening up offices, Modi's magic, as you refer to it. We very much are feeling that in the last 12 to 18 months in our own business. With that said, what words of encouragement would you give either somebody like myself or Canadian business people that post-Modi's era, we won't slide backwards, we'll continue to be as progressive as we have been in the last 18 months?
Sir, unless you think we are suicidal, which I don't think we are. If you look at me, I don't look like. Why will we slide back? What do the people need? 70% of India's population is young. It's aspirational. Education is widespread. Communications are widespread. Awareness is widespread. What do you need? You need growth. You need development. For India, we only need three things. First is growth, second is growth, third is growth. And it is not just Prime Minister Modi having started it. It started in 1991. And as I mentioned, in the first, at the time of independence, 1947, our growth rate was 1%. Next 40 years was 3%. And then last 30 years had been 6%. And the only solution is economic development. And we are very conscious of the fact that India is not the best in doing the ease of doing business. And we know that there is no solution but to get our act together. The big difference today from yesterday is that earlier we found external issues. Today we know that whatever challenges are there, they are within us. And we need to get our act right. And I can promise you, sir, that there is going to be no sliding back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. By the way, I should mention that that very discreet gentleman who asked the second last question was one of our greatest mayors of the last half century, Art Eggleton, now a member of the Canadian Senate. Welcome, Mr. Eggleton. Thank you for being with us. Here to express our collective appreciation is Barbara Jessup.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for coming to greet us at the Empire Club and share these insights into your fascinating country. Like many Canadians, I'm mesmerized by your culture and your growth and the wonderful things that are emerging in industry today. And frankly, I can't wait to visit, like many of the people at the head table that we were talking to today. My presence at the podium today comes as a bit of a surprise to me. I'm not here as a director of the Empire Club, but representing my client, Lufthansa German Airlines. My client has been felled by a pestilence of some kind, and I can tell you that speaking to her this morning, we can all be very grateful that she spared us her presence. But I'm here to bring her thanks on behalf of Lufthansa German Airlines. But before I get into that, I just want to tell you, Mr. Ambassador, that one of the things that came out in your speech is you shared many, many similarities between Canada and Canada and India, I think. And one of them is that it wasn't that long ago that many Americans would arrive at our borders with skis on the top of their car in the middle of July. So we do share things. We do share many things in common. So on behalf of Lufthansa German Airlines, they have been just delighted to be here to partner with India Tourism in presenting your talk to us today. They have been promoting India as a key tourism destination and as a business partner for over 20 years. The relationship that Lufthansa German Airlines has had with your country is very special and rooted deeply, spanning over 50 years in terms of their actual carrier service into India. India has become an important player in the world, as you noted, and they're very aware of this and delighted to be serving your country. And based on your remarks today, I've been asked to tell you that they are sure that at least another 50 years of service lie ahead of them, and very prosperous at that. Now, the ambassador alluded to the ease with which you can now get your visas to India, and India Tourism has been very generous with us in providing gift bags for all of you as you leave today, and in it you'll find some information on how you can get that visa so that you don't have to put your trip off any longer. So thank you, Mr. Ambassador. It's been a sheer pleasure to have you here. It's been a much anticipated event by me and other members of the Empire Club, and we're very grateful that you found time for us.
Thank you very much, Barbara, and thank you to our very generous partners today, as Barbara mentioned, Lufthansa German Airlines and Incredible India. And wow, I can't think of a better time to get that information on a visa, Barbara. I'm actually starting my application process tomorrow, going to India in about 3 weeks. I'd also like to thank the National Post, our print national sponsor, and Rogers TV, our broadcaster, for broadcasting this across Canada. We'd also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, which is Canada's online event space for live webcasting and podcasting this event at the global level. Follow us on Twitter at empire_club and visit us online at empireclub.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Please join us again soon, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of great events coming up over the coming weeks and months. Next week, we have the Honourable Glenn Murray, the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. That will be November 5th at the Sheraton Centre Hotel, followed by Carol Browner, former Director of the White House Office of Energy and Climate Change Policy and an former Environmental Protection Agency Administrator, who will be speaking to us on November the 12th. Premier Brad Wall, the Premier of Saskatchewan, joins us on November 19th at the Royal York Hotel, our third Premier in less than 2 months. Heather Conway, the head of CBC Television, will be here on November the 20th at the Arcadian Court. Many of you may have seen the Empire Club profiled on the CBC hit series The Murdoch Mysteries about 2 weeks ago. We have the Governor of the Bank of Canada coming on December the 8th at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre to talk about the future of the economy next year, what we can look forward to. And we just booked a few days ago Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin, the head of the Supreme Court of Canada. She'll be joining us at the beginning of the spring next year. So lots to look forward to. And in the interim, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.